Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Joel?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on today and taking the time to interview for Metal Rules.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Appreciate
of
it.
course. Yeah. Cool. So you've just released this project with a bunch of your close friends and other awesome artists from around the world. And yeah, how does it feel?
It's good. It's cool. It's kind of an interesting thing how it all turned out because we weren't really expecting to kind of do an album. It was originally just going to be two B-sides for a solo project that I was doing, and I had a bunch of original material written. And then the pandemic hit, and nobody, everybody was home, and no one was touring. And so I reached out to a bunch of people and said, "Hey, do you want to, play on a couple songs?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And then more people started coming forward, and so we ended up doing an album of cover songs. And so we released it, and it seems to be doing pretty good.
Yeah, and those are a bunch of your favorites or like a collaborative effort of favorites.
Yeah, I've there's songs that I've always dug, like, over the years. I mean, and even the people that played on the album, they're friends of mine, and people that I wanted to record with, for years and years and years, and never had a chance to. Some of them I never had a chance to, but I wanted to. And so I reached out to them, and they're like, "Yeah, of course, they'd be happy to do it." So
Yeah.
it was a blast. Had fun.
Awesome. And so you did quite a few songs for the album that aren't originally rock songs. They're kind of from across the board, and you adapted them. So what was that process like, kind of working together to get those arrangements done?
Yeah. So originally, they're all songs that were kind of favorites of mine, and I knew that kind of the way my brain works, that I wanted to rock them up a little bit and put a little more of an edge to them. So like Turning Japanese was run right out of the gate. Sailing was one that I wanted to do, like, for, gosh, like 20 years now, because every time I heard that song on the radio on a smooth jazz station or something, I was like, God, that's just aching to be rocked up.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, we could heavy that up a little bit. And Life in the Fast Lane's a classic, and we've heard that a million times by the Eagles, which is a great tune. But I was like, let's put a little Pantera in it and a little bit of Hendrix, and kind of mash it up a little bit and have some fun with it. And so yeah, I was really happy with the way they all turned out.
Cool. Yeah, that was my next question, was that Pantera really snuck up on me.
That's good.
It did was,
It's
yeah,
supposed to.
sure, exactly. And so is that something that you heard in your head one day that would just kind of maybe fit, or?
Actually, that was so I had another solo project called Shockhead in the probably mid '90s, and we would close our show with Life in the Fast Lane. And so when we used to play that out live, one day we were messing around in the rehearsal room when we threw in that last verse. We threw Walk in there and played it over, but we kept the lyrics with Life in the Fast Lane, and it worked out killer. And so we were like, let's try it live and see how it goes over. And people loved it. So that song actually has three-fourths of Shockhead playing that song, but we never got to record it because it was a cover tune. So we were like, yeah, let's put that on the album and throw it in there and see what people think. So it was fun.
All right, cool. So you didn't get to record it till now.
Yeah, what, 30 years later, something.
So is there a memory of recording this that stands out? Some.
You know, so the interesting thing was, uh, we have people from all over the world on this album. So we have people that are from France, and another guitar player that's in Maui, a bass player that's in Texas, a singer that's in Las Vegas, a bass player that's in Peru. So it was like the biggest challenge was, well, actually, let me back up. The coolest thing was because when I went in and cut the drums, I cut the drums by myself to a click track. And I knew the arrangement in my head, how I kind of wanted to hear it. So I had to translate that to each musician, and then they would layer their parts on, and then they'd send the files to somebody else, and then they'd layer their parts on. And before you know it, you had a full band, right? After going all over the world. but the challenge was when we would go to mix it, it was very difficult to keep everything consistent, as opposed to like in a recording studio where you have a band all working together in one studio. And so it was a little difficult. It was a little bit of a challenge to make the whole album sound consistent all the way through, because you had so many different, you know, tracks with different guitars and different types of amps and different types of microphones. And so it was a little bit of a challenge, but I think the best memory is to put something out, send a file, just a raw drum file to somebody, and then they put their own spin on it of how they hear it in their heads. And then that transposes to another band or another musician, and they say, oh, you know, I could do this to it, and transpose that, you know, how their ideas to that. And then every time you get another sound file, it's like, wow, that's really cool. I would have never thought of putting that in there, or, you know, playing it like that, or having somebody else play it like that. And just how it just kind of formulated and became cohesive and in a setting that almost sounds like an actual band, and it sounds really tight, you know. And just the way the songs kind of transformed was really interesting. I really dug that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's really different doing something like that, and having to kind of go, like you said, across the world with it, and not be in that room together, and not kind of have that working environment. Have you done something like that before, or was this completely new to you?
I've done session work where I've like cut drums and you know, sent the files somewhere else, and then the band has recorded the rest of the album. There's been another time where a band actually had a whole album written, and they didn't like the way their drummer played on it, and it was all cut to, you know, a metronome, to a click track. So I just went in there and learned the songs, and then cut the drums over what was already the pre-existing tracks. So, you know, it's a little different having people all over the place, and you know, trying to make sense of it, you know, once I have all the files, and actually get in the studio and mix it with my engineer. But yeah, this is the first time I've ever done something like that, and it was easy in a lot of ways, because you didn't have to spend a lot of time in the studio and use a lot of studio time and pay a lot of money to sit there and you know, go over parts and figure stuff out, and, you know, why don't you try this and why don't you try that. But in the same regard, it was a little more difficult, because we didn't have that time to bounce ideas off each other. It was just kind of like, here's what I want to play, you know, what do you think of this? They might give me like 3 or 4 or 5 different tracks of guitar solos, and then I'd have to pick which one I really liked, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but it was cool. Yeah, I'd do it again, definitely.
Sure. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of computer time, a lot of screen.
Yes. Yes. A lot of screen time. Yeah.
As is the way right now. So kind of more on a general scale, you've spent quite some time in the music industry. I know you're pretty seasoned, have played with, you know, so many different people, different musicians on many different projects. So I'm curious, in this time, what have been some of the more challenging things that have actually helped you become the artist you are now?
Things that have helped me become the artist I am now. Well, probably the biggest thing would be my mom. Because she's the one, you know, she played piano. She's the one that sat me on the piano bench when I was 3 years old and let me bang on the piano while she was like playing Burt Bacharach music, you know, and raindrops keep falling on my head. And then, you know, she put me into the Yamaha School of Music when I was 3 years old to learn how to play piano, and I got my music degree by the time I was 6. And just her, you know, pushing me to kind of, you know, do the music thing. And it's something that I really kind of latched onto when I was little. Then I started taking drum lessons when I was 6. I went on tour with a college percussion group on a California tour by the time I was 11, and I was playing LA clubs by the time I was 14. So it was just kind of like a progression of, you know, she saw I was interested in pursuing music, and she stuck by me, you know, through that, and kind of, you know, let me live my dream for what it was. You know, I mean, I never really made it hugely famous, you know, or anything like that. I'm not living in $1 million house, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. You know, those experiences of touring all over the world and playing with some of the amazing musicians I've played with, and the friendships I've made over the years, and you know, all the studio time, and it's all, you know, knowledge. It's all a learning process, and you know, she was my biggest cheerleader, and that's probably the biggest inspiration for me.
Hmm. Gotta love moms for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Awesome. And so are you currently based out of California?
yeah. I live in Southern California. Yeah, in Temecula area.
Nice. Yeah, it's so beautiful down there. I'm just up a little bit. I'm in BC, Canada.
Oh, nice. Well, you got snow then, don't you?
Not really. We had a couple weeks recently,
Okay.
but usually we don't really get much. Not in Vancouver. Yeah.
Okay, that's not bad. Yeah. My gosh, the last time I played in Vancouver was New Year's 90. Oh gosh, was it 92 or 93? A place called the Town Pump. It's probably not even there anymore.
I've heard about it a lot. I've heard about it from everybody, but I never got a chance. So
It was a blast. It was a good show too. Yeah.
no, that's what everybody says. It's just, yeah, sure, rub it in. But,
That was a long time ago.
yeah, I know. But
Doesn't count.
yeah. And so, I mean, that's obviously not there anymore. So many places are closed. Most
Yeah, even down here too.
can't really go anywhere at the moment, and it's difficult for everybody. But you know, for people who are used to playing music live or just love to go and watch it, it's really difficult to kind of have that taken away from you for so long when it's such a big part of who you are.
Yes.
And so obviously quarantine covers, the name explains it all. It's it's written in there.
Yep.
It's an expression of
Yep.
what you can do when you're locked up inside. And so obviously that helps you and so many other musicians is just to keep playing. But is there anything else that continues to make you feel like yourself in a time where not much is available?
You know, it's a little challenging because I stopped touring probably about 11 or 12 years ago. And that's another reason why I brought my mom up in this conversation, is she had a massive brain hemorrhage about 12 years ago and had a stroke. And it left her permanently disabled. So me being the only child, and my stepdad is 96 years old, taking care of her, you know, wanting to take care of her, I pretty much vowed to stop touring and stay home and take care of them full time. And so, you know, it kind of worked out because I've been doing a lot of session work and doing stuff in the studio to still stay relevant and record with different artists. And then, you know, in the meantime, while I can stay in the local vicinity and stay local so I can take care of her, I can also do the quarantine covers. But you know, it's amazing how many people it affected. Obviously, it's the musicians, you know, that when the pandemic hit, they couldn't tour, they couldn't really do anything. A lot of musicians put out, you know, had albums recorded that they couldn't put out because they couldn't support it. You know, they couldn't go out and tour it. So, you know, there's probably a lot of bands out there that are going to have like 2 or 3 albums worth of material once this is all done and over with. Then they're going to get on the road and they're going to keep putting out albums, and there's going to be like a massive overflow of music to, you know, get to obtain. But you know, it's not just the artists, it's the road crew, it's the tour managers, it's the artists, it's the agents, it's the managers, it's the attorneys. You know, it's like the whole group of people. And some I discussed it with another on another interview I did a couple days ago, is nobody thinks of Las Vegas, you know, or the Broadway shows in New York. You know, it's like all those people got hit. All the shows in Vegas got hit. All the Cirque du Soleils. It's not just the music. It's the, you know, the onstage talent. It's the dancers. It's the light riggers. It's everybody. You know, and it's like, it's amazing how many people. I had a friend in Vegas that's in a Vegas show, and she was selling her Vegas costumes on eBay just so she could pay her mortgage. You know, and it's like, what do? You know, you can't, that sure thing job that you had as being an entertainer in Vegas for a big show, you know, that you thought, yeah, I'm doing, you know, 8 shows a week or 7 shows a week, and it's not going to get taken away from me. And then the pandemic hits. And my wife and I went to Vegas a couple times during the pandemic, and it was a ghost town. I mean, you could drive down the strip and there was like nobody on the strip. You know, it was like insane. It seemed like the apocalypse, you know,
Yeah.
and everybody's afraid to go out. Nobody wants to go out, you know, and it's a scary time, and it continues. You know, I remember originally they were saying it was going to be like 2 weeks, you know, or a month. And when it first hit, we were on a cruise. We were in the Caribbean. Actually, it was 2 years today, because the day we boarded the ship was the day Kobe died. I remembered. So it was like literally 2 years ago, and we were on the ship and we started hearing about this pandemic stuff. And literally our cruise, when we got back, we were like one of the last 3 ships before they shut everything down. And then even when we were flying home, we really didn't know anything about it at the time. It was just kind of like, you know, a couple people here and a couple people there, you know, tested positive. And, you know, when we went into the airport, all of a sudden you saw people wearing masks, and we're like, what is this all about? And then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, it was like, boom, everywhere, you know, done.
Yeah. I had a similar situation. I was abroad and living abroad, and then had to come home, and ended up getting out of, I was living in the UK, ended up getting out of there the day before they went into lockdown, just like,
oh wow,
my flight was the next day. And I thought I'd be home for, you know, a month, 2 months max, but it's been 2 years.
Yep. Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, so let's take it back a little bit. I know you have your degree in piano and music notation and theory and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
and
that's
so,
all boring stuff.
I mean, it's so good for your brain, though. It's so good. So drums, then, I assume you feel are really your thing.
It's yeah, it's the best thing I know how to do. It's like, you know, I can only do so many things. In my brain, I'd love to be a great guitar player.
Yeah.
I've always been attracted to guitar, and I love, you know, killer guitar players. I love Paul Gilbert and Tony McAlpine and Eddie Van Halen and all those guys, but I just don't have, you know, that dexterity to be able to play really good. I can play enough to get me in trouble, but I can't I can't do all the solo stuff. So
Yeah.
so I stick to drums. That's good enough for me.
And has that magic stayed alive for you, you know, the whole time? That, you know, when you get behind the kit, it's your space and your thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever see like videos of me or me playing, I got a big smile on my face, because it's something internally that I naturally love to do, you know. And when I'm on tour, the rest of the time is like, oh geez, you know, it's, the traveling is like the thing you have to deal with. And then when you actually get on stage, that's the best part of the 24-hour day, you know.
Yeah.
That hour and a half that you're on stage and you get to play and have a blast, you know, and do what you love to do. And I always say, you know, even when I was touring and going to Europe and stuff like that, it was like being on vacation. It was like getting paid to be on vacation, you know, because it's, you know, it's not a challenge. It's something you love to do, and it's exciting to do, and it's in your soul, and it's an amazing thing, you know. And then when you don't get to do it, it's like, oh crap, you know, what do I do now to keep myself busy and keep myself happy? So that's why I did this.
Get that emotional deficit out of here, and
yeah,
bring in the good stuff.
Keep the creative process going.
Mm-hmm. So are there any drummers from rock or outside the genre that inspired you growing up?
Too many. Of course, Bonham. Neil Peart was a life-changing experience. That was like a big influence. Tommy Aldridge was another one. Dean Castronovo. Buddy Rich, the first time I saw him on TV. I think I saw him on Johnny Carson, and I was just blown away. Billy Cobham. I mean, there's so many, there's so many that I've drawn influences from. I mean, Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees when I was a little kid watching the Monkees on TV, and even though they didn't write a lot of the songs, that collaboration of voice and heart writing those great Monkees songs, it was like, it perked my ears up, and I remember when I played piano, my mom said, "Don't you want to be a professional piano player?" I said, "Piano players don't really get chicks unless they're Elton John or somebody really an amazing pianist." And I didn't see myself doing that. So I was like, "I'm going to play drums," because Mickey Dolenz always seemed to, have the girls and stuff, and Ringo, girls liked Ringo too. So I was like, yeah, I'll try doing drums. But I was just drawn to it. And there's so many amazing drummers. I mean, like I told you before, I grew up listening, my mom used to listen to Burt Bacharach and Herb Alpert, on the Tijuana Brass when she used to clean the house. And I grew up around all that orchestration and that, keyboards and violins and melody and harmonization and stuff and strings. And so I never discriminated on any type of music, growing up. It was always like, yeah, I can, I love Sabbath, I love Ozzy, I love Dio, but at the same time, I can listen to Dionne Warwick or Jimmy Buffett, or, I played on a country album before, it's like, it doesn't matter to me as long as it's good and it's something that talks to me and I dig it. It all goes into the hard drive in the brain and stays there, and I pull from it,
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to have that wide range, wide spectrum of things you can draw from, and that, to have that appreciation. So
yeah.
Cool. And I have lots of friends and people I know that have played and toured throughout the early 2000s, 90s, the 80s, and there seems to be kind of a different thing in each era. And so I'm curious for you over the years, how you see the changes that have happened in the music industry, particularly to rock, and what you find challenging about it. And is there anything that you find good that has changed?
you say that so hesitantly.
Well, because I just I know what the venues are like. I know that it's not as it's not so much the thing anymore. Like and Sunset Strip was a thing, and you had Molly Crew playing at wherever. Just
yeah,
it's not an every weekend kind of thing, at least not around here.
Yeah, no, not really here either. I mean, there's very few clubs even here that you can play that style of music at, especially in San Diego. I mean, even like when bands go on tour, they usually skip over San Diego and just hit LA. Yeah. For years they did that, because San Diego's kind of like a tourist destination. It's like Vegas, know. But I think the biggest challenge, or the most interesting thing, is the recording process. Is back when I was recording, albums in the 80s and 90s and even 2000s, it was 2-inch tape. It was analog. You had to get it right the first time, all the way through. You had to get a perfect take of a song, maybe you could make 1 or 2 splices, on the tape or something, but you had to get it first or second take, perfect, and now it's just all computer. I wouldn't have been able to do this album if it was like that still, so yes, technology has made it possible to make things happen, especially like in this kind of situation where it's all sound files, and then you just go to somebody's house with Pro Tools and mix it, and that's a great thing. Although I do like the sound of the old albums better with analog 2-inch tape, that big, fat, nice, huge sound, and now you just have MP3s and people listen to stuff on a phone. It's like, yeah, well, whatever, it lasts a couple seconds and then they're on to the next thing.
Yep.
But as far as, the music overall, I mean, there's still a lot of great bands that are coming out now. It's just a little more diverse, it's just things change over the years. Even when 24/7 Spyz was hitting in the late 80s, early 90s, we were right on the cusp of that grunge era coming in. In fact, before I got in the band, Nirvana actually opened up for 24/7 Spyz on the Bleach tour, and then look what happened. They blew up. They toured with Primus, we toured with Public Enemy, we toured with Follow for Now, and they toured with Alice Cooper, before I got in the band. And it's like they were kind of like there was more, I would say, like kind of diversity back then, and you being in the UK, even like the festivals in Europe, you would have all kinds of bands put together. It wasn't an all metal, thing. You'd have Prodigy and Georgia Satellites and Inner Circle, and they'd all be on the same bill together back to back. But the 80s had their hair days, in Sunset Strip, and then the 90s kind of transformed into like the new metal stuff, and then the grunge era, and and there's little episodes of all of those decades that I love. That you draw from all of them. It's like, yeah, I loved Motley Crue back in the day, and I loved this and that. Not so much now, but but I did back then, and Rat and Dokken, and you grew up with all that stuff. I still love it when I hear it on the radio on Ozzy's Boneyard or something. It's like, yeah, it's all cool stuff. But it's amazing to me, like when you listen to it now, the production is different on those albums. It's like, you got the big snare drums and the kind of mid-rangey guitars, and it's a little different animal to now, where you have like so much. It's so different sonically too. But yeah, over the decades things change. There's still cool bands out there. You just got to kind of look for them. There's still good stuff. But the demise of the major record labels that used to be into signing metal and rock, it kind of sucks that there's not really much of those around. You still have Metal Blade, you still have a handful of labels that are still pushing for the little guy, the newbies that are coming through that want to get signed. But there's always stuff out there. Everything is on YouTube now. You can find anything on YouTube. There's tons of great bands on there. You just got to search for them.
Yeah.
But you don't have the machine pushing them anymore. You don't have the radio marketing and the tour support and the $1 million deals, and all that's kind of gone to the wayside, unless you're like Pink or Madonna or something.
Yeah. The machine will continue to be the machine.
Yeah.
Whichever way it decides to go. So that's another thing. So
yeah,
I'll get our turn in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it about rock? And feel free to be as simple or as detailed as you wish, but what is it that caught you about the genre and drove you to really stick with it?
That's kind of hard to say, because I think it was I think it really didn't hit me until my early teenage years, because I remember when I was 6 and 7, when I started taking drum lessons. I was taking drum lessons from this college professor named Ron George, and he was kind of an old hippie dude, big beard, and he was really, really great player, but he primarily was into jazz, and I wanted to learn Led Zeppelin and all these other things. And so we made a deal, and if I had an hour lesson with him once a week, he would teach me how to read jazz music and notation and stuff, and how to sight read for the first half hour. And then the second half hour, he would teach me how to play the drum beat on an album that I brought in. So he was cool like that, where we would split the difference. Like, he would get what he wanted to do, I would get what I wanted to do. And so I started learning, how to play Moby Dick, and how to learn how to play, songs from Chicago, or from, this album or this band, or whatever the case may be. And as I started learning those drum parts, I started getting more into the rock stuff. And then at that time, I was like, I didn't care about jazz. Didn't want to know anything about jazz. But he really pushed me into that, which is good because I ended up eventually getting into jazz as I got older. But I was really into the rock stuff. And then I joined a band, a local band, when I was probably 15 called Metal Arsenal. And we played covers. And we would play parties, backyard parties and stuff like that. But the guitar player in the band was very into the underground metal scene. And so he had all this vinyl. He had like Tigers of Pantang and the Rods and Raven and Accept and, all this great stuff. And he turned me on to it. And that was a life-changing thing for me, because I was hearing all this stuff and I was like, this is what I want to play. And so we ended up learning how to play all those songs. And then we'd go play a party. Nobody ever heard of that stuff, so they thought they were originals. And they were like, these guys are great, but we're playing all this amazing stuff from overseas, and they never had an idea. So that's what really got me into the rock path. And then I think I was about, I don't know, I might have been like 16 or something like that. And I answered the ad in BAM magazine. I don't know if you remember BAM magazine, but it was a big magazine in LA, in the classified section. And you never knew who was going to run an ad in the classified section. Sometimes it would just be an LA band. Sometimes it would be, the next big thing. You never knew. And so I answered an ad in there for a drummer needed, and it said to contact this management company. So I sent a package, a promo package, and somebody called me back a couple days later, and they're like, Terry wants you to come and play. And I had no idea who Terry was. So I was like, can you FedEx me a tape and I'll learn the songs? And they're like, yeah. So the management company sent me a tape. I had no idea who this person was, and learned the 3 songs. Went to SIR in Hollywood, and I walk in and it's Geezer Butler. It was Terry Butler from Black Sabbath.
Okay.
And he was working on a solo project, and I went in and played the 3 songs with him, and he was like amazed and thought I was great. And the only reason why I didn't get the gig was he was afraid I was too young. And sweetest guy, had an amazing time, got to play with him for like 2 hours, and it's something that I'll always remember. But it was like, that was like a life-changing moment for me, because I was like, I get it. I see the process now. I see how, to audition for bands, what you got to do to kind of get your foot in the door. And, a little bit after that, I auditioned for Bullet Boys. I auditioned for DRI. I auditioned for, Paul Gilbert. There was like, the list goes on and on and on. And then I ended up getting the gig with 24/7 Spyz. And, that was like the longest run I had. They were a great bunch of guys, and did a bunch of albums with them, and had a good little run.
Awesome. I mean, I'm sure you have lots of stories to tell and lots of wild, crazy things that happened. Is there anything off the top of your head that stands out as just the craziest story?
We can't discuss that.
Oh God.
We can't talk about that.
Can't talk about this on the internet? Oh my God.
See, there's a good reason why there weren't cell phones invented back then, that everybody had video that they could throw all over the internet. So that was a good thing. We had a time period there where we didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But even as a just a regular touring band around the US and Europe and stuff, I mean, the mindset kind of changes once you're on the road for a long period of time, and I remember the first tour I did with 24/7 Spyz. It was like, I thought you had to live the rock star lifestyle on the road, and we're playing 7 nights a week in a different town every night with no days off, in a different city. And it was like I had walking pneumonia after 2 weeks, because it just breaks you down. You can't keep that pace up. or else you're not going to perform, you're not going to be able to perform. So then it was like, okay, I get it. Got to take your vitamins and go to bed after the meet and greets and not stay up all night and drink and party and, hang out with everybody. And it was like, there were some days, some nights that, you let loose a little bit and had a good time. And then most of the time it was like, yeah, we played the show and took showers and we were in bed or in our bunks and off to the next town and trying to get some rest,
Yeah.
But you got to pace yourself. Otherwise you're going to burn out pretty quick.
Hear you. Well, I guess, you guys won't be touring as the Frequency Conspiracy. But do you foresee this collective getting together at some point in the future and maybe just, having some jams face to face?
So I've talked to a few people that have played on the album about possibly doing some dates, because almost like as soon as this was announced, even before the album was released, we already had show offers. And I was kind of like, I'm not really sure if I want to do that just yet, because I've had so many bands or so many friends in bands that set up tours and then it's like a month later they're canceled, and then they have to rebook the dates and then they're canceling, and it's like you can't plan on anything. And it just seems like constant work, like you're on a treadmill, because you're not getting anything done, because we don't know, we don't know if we're going to be able to play dates in the summer or not. We thought this was going to be over a long time ago. So there's a handful of musicians that if we wanted to go out and do some shows, we do like a short run, maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, just in the US, maybe some major cities, or maybe just on the West Coast, some regional dates. But there's a possibility, we might do some stuff, but I want to make sure that, they're safe and everybody that is going to be in the audience is going to be safe, and we can do it, responsibly, instead of just doing some one-off show in, Houston or something like that and trying to get people all out here. But, the guys that are on this album are like all really killer players, and you probably only take 1 or 2 rehearsals to, blast through the stuff and then go play some shows. So I won't say no, we're not going to. I'll keep that option open, but there's a possibility. It just, I don't know when. I don't want to say when. In the meantime, we're doing some more videos. We got the video for Sailing that's going to be released this weekend, and probably do at least another 2 or 3 in the months to come. So
yeah, fun.
Yeah.
Fun. Is Joshua Jones perhaps going to play with you? Because I thought his guitar playing was just phenomenal.
I hope so.
Okay.
Joshua is an amazing player, and he's a super cool dude, and he's starting to get a pretty big buzz on the internet. That's how I found him. Somebody sent me a video of him playing some Van Halen stuff, and I was like, dang, this guy's great. And I hit him up on Facebook, I think, and I asked him if he was coming out for the NAMM show actually the last NAMM show, like in 2020, I think it was. And he flew out, and we hung out for like an hour and a half and talked and stuff. And I said, I'd like you to play on some stuff. And he was like, yeah, just let me know. And we've been talking ever since. So he's a super cool guy and amazing. For his age and everything, he's super, super talented.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll tell you a story about, he played on Shapes of Things on this. And it's funny because he's so young that he's not like completely tuned into like all the history of guitar players. He knows a lot of guitar players, and he's starting to learn more and more as he's getting older, but he's still kind of a young pup. So I said, hey, have you ever heard of Gary Moore? And he was like, yeah, I heard of him. I'm thinking about doing this song. It's a Yardbird song, but Gary Moore did a version of Shapes of Things, and I kind of want to take it, do that thing. I said, do you think you could play the solo on that? And he was like, well, let me hear it. So I literally sent him the link to the YouTube video of Shapes of Things. And like 10 minutes later, he sends me back the sound file of him playing the solo. And he's like this. And I was like, what an asshole. He just ripped it off like that, like no big deal. Yeah. I was like, yeah, like that. Okay, I guess we're doing that song.
Yeah, Gary Moore is not an easy one to pull off either.
Right, that's what I was like. That's why I asked him. I was like, are you sure you're okay with this? It was like, oh, like this?
Please.
Yeah. Yeah, that like that. You okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Shake it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's too good. All right. Well, I mean, that kind of brings us to the end. Thank you so much again. And you are obviously a fantastic drummer and just a lovely person to talk to.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our readers before we sign off?
Just go get the Frequency Conspiracy, get the album CD. I guess I should say I wasn't going to put out CDs. I was almost going to just release it digitally, and then I posted some on Facebook, and everybody was like, "No, you got to do CDs. People still like CDs." So I printed up a small batch of CDs. I still have a couple hundred left, and either they're available on Amazon, pick them up on Amazon, or it's also on iTunes if you're in the digital age, like 90% of the people in the world right now. So streaming services, it's everywhere. Pick it up, check it out. Hope you dig it.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel.
Cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Have a good one.
Okay. You too. Bye.
Bye.